bagels.
What's that?
Do we not have a bagel company?
We don't have a bagel partner, Trent.
Gosh,
welcome back to the podcast, everybody. Trent just tried to house a suggestion that we need a bagel partner here on the podcast. We don't. I just want to say welcome back to everybody. Thanks very much. Like, subscribe, smash the subscribe button. Here's something for everybody out there. When you give me nasty comments in the reels and you say, what episode is this from? Subscribe. Turn on your notifications. You won't miss a single episode. And if you're on the team, if you're back behind the paywall, if you're just on the, you decide to really invest in yourself and invest in your future, you'll be able to have access to us, early access to content, a huge and growing library of stuff that you can only get as a member. There's a whole bunch of stuff back there. So don't yell at me in the comments about what is this from. Do some of your own work. Hit that like button. Hit that subscribe button. While you're at it, go over to onesready.com. Check it out. We're going to have new shirts. There's going to be a new flag. There's the Dresden flag coming out that we're very excited about. I can't wait. We're going to restock all the other flags. We've got some new designs coming out. We're going to have limited runs of your favorite stuff, so check that out. And then if you're really ready to take a step in the right direction, you know who I would go get my gear from? Trent, JTAC Elite. Why? Tell us, Trent. Why JTAC Elite?
They have the stuff that you need. The exact same stuff that you're going to train with in the pipelines, any pipelines that you're going into, whether you're Ranger, Green Beret, SEAL, MARSOC, or, if you're smart, Air Force Special Warfare.
Air Force Special Warfare is the way to go. And JTAC Elite has everything that you need to get set up, from the correct diameter of rope to tie underneath the water.
Why is it with you? Every time we do JTAC Elite, you're always like, the ropes.
I'm a PJ.
Oh,
Trent,
you
welcome.
Guys make me sick.
Yeah, you talk about lace doilies and freaking uniform combinations and stuff. Peaches talks about whatever controllers talk about. It doesn't matter. Those kids can't.
Flannel strippers.
Harley's flannels, divorce, LORs.
It's gonna make these grids disappear.
Oh yeah, bro.
I've got to pay your child support first.
I already wrote down the 9 line because I know where it's going to be on the exercise. So all I have to do is read it. I don't even have to think about it.
Oh, they have to figure it out.
I have a pre-written 9 line. That's how good I am. That's why they
can't
call me
operate without JTAC now.
I know. Yeah. it used to be big antennas, but our big antennas have gotten much smaller. It's easy to find a controller now because all you do is look for the guy like this
with the glowing face.
Yeah,
his glowing double chin, fat P. Fucking just walking around like highlighting his double chin to the enemy. Some of those TAC Ps out there, some of you fat Ps, I swear to God, you actually are a point of reference. They actually used your double chin as a size of reference for the enemy. They were like, hey, call contact on the mountain. You see the mountain? Okay, you see the guy with the glowing double chin? Use that as a unit of measure. 4 units of measure away. That's where those guys are. Anyway, go to JTAC Elite, get all the gear that you need. Use our code onesready at checkout. You can just buy it directly from our site. It's the easiest way to go. I'm drinking coffee. Peaches is eating a bagel or whatever else. Trent just basically lives on like caffeine and anger. But if you needed to rehydrate, Peaches, who would you rehydrate with?
Oh, I'd go with Hoist, actually. And funny enough, you mentioned that because I've got a whole stack of them down here. It's great. I just got a shipment in, so it's fantastic.
That is so, I know. I did.
Yeah. I love level hydration, great flavors, and I tell you who brought it in and unpacked it all for me? Wyatt, my son.
Yeah, you know why?
And there was already some missing.
I was gonna say, yeah, because he's taking that tax, man. Go over to drinkhoist.com, use our code onesready at checkout. You can also check them out wherever they are. They have the premix, they have the powders. I'm a powder guy. I love it. The folks at Hoist know me so well because they were nice enough to send me, like, I got some black cherry, I got some strawberry lemonade. Those are my 2 favorite premix flavors. That was great. Love it. Had it in the fridge. And it was funny too, because you could tell that the person that was packing the thing knew me, because there was just like a handful of the powders in there. And I was like, you know me so well. Don't church it up. Don't put them in the packaging. Just throw them in there. It was hilarious. Trent, what's your favorite premix flavor?
My premix? I don't know. The red one, fruit punch. Is that fruit punch?
Well, yeah. Well, there's a red one. The powders have the fruit punch.
Let me see.
Okay.
I'm still a peach mango fan because I don't think they don't have a
nice.
They don't have a black cherry powder yet.
They don't. I can't wait until they do black cherries.
Good.
Go to drinkhoist.com. Check everything out there. Check us out where we are. We got a bunch. You're going to see us on a bunch of different stuff. We do podcasts with everybody. Follow us, like, subscribe. It would really help us out. Share the show with people. That would be cool too. Because you know what? We think we should be bigger than we are as well. And that's not an egotistical thing. It's just like, hey, we've been around for a long time. We think we're providing value. Share it with your friends. And now, on to this week's episode. Listen, we're going to talk some cross-trainee stuff. Some numbers came out. There's some hullabaloo that's going on. We want to start on a topic. I'm not smart enough to talk about this, which is why I'm the one blabbering and running this episode, because I'm just going to turn it over to the people that are smarter than me, which is Trent and Peaches. The first thing that we're going to start for here, we got a good question. Why don't we take tech sergeants for cross-trainees? This has been a thing that we've explained a couple times, but it was a question that we got, and I want to do right by y'all and explain it. Trent, why is it in the selection process, and let's just say that like there's always some wiggle room, that one of the career fields sometimes has enough room where they'll take a tech sergeant here and there. I'm not saying it hasn't ever happened. I'm saying as a standard, we typically do not accept E6s into the cross-training architecture. Can you start laying out the breadcrumbs of why is it that we don't take tech sergeants?
Yeah, so first thing is as you go up in rank, there are fewer and fewer slots for every rank that you go up, right? Like when there's like, say you have like 100 staff sergeant slots. When you go up to tech sergeant, there are not 100 tech sergeant slots necessarily, and then there are way fewer master sergeant slots, and so on and so forth. So by simple math, and we do these equations, right, based on our retainability and all these other things that are happening within our career field, we do the math to say where do we need more people? And typically where we need more people is senior airman and staff sergeant. Almost always. It's not really a big thing. So the first thing is math, right? And then the second part of this is, man, it's a long pipeline. And if you're a tech sergeant and then you're testing for rank outside of your career field or inside of your old career field, or however it works, depending on where you're at, and you make master sergeant and you show up on team as a master that just came out of the pipeline, it's not really what we want. I mean, that's just, honestly, think of your career field. Think of someone that shows up as a master sergeant and they're day one, right? Day one out of the tech school. And they're trying to tell people what to do. It's like, you're supposed to be a supervisor. It's like almost worse than a lieutenant. You know what I mean? It's the same kind of situation.
It's funny how people don't put this together too. Like, just make it about your life. Like if you're a maintainer and you're trying to cross-train, you're like, oh, this is so dumb. I can't cross-train as a tech sergeant. Okay. So how about this? How about a brand new tech sergeant that was a medical dude shows up to the flight line on day one, and that's your flight chief now? Does that make any sense? It wouldn't work, right? The entire system would break down. And then what happens when you have, I don't know, 2 or 3? Our career fields are so small, right? There's only 500 PJs. Imagine if one year we were just like, you know what? Cross-trainees, we're going to allow everybody to come in. We got like 7 tech sergeants that actually went through the pipeline and then made it. Those like 7 people are going to be in a room somewhere, and that's going to be like 5 flight chiefs, a director of training, and like an assistant op soup and an NCOIC of a flight in 2 years. You know what I mean? So imagine like they're going to make calls for the career field that they've been in the pipeline. They get out and they've been in the career field really for 6 months, because the pipeline is not real life. The pipeline is fake. And then you get into the real world and you start working. Like imagine all of those people with no connection really to the career field. They didn't grow up in it. They haven't assimilated to the cultures, the standards, the norms, the expectations that we have. So we can't put them in those leadership positions right away. You have to let them grow into it. And it just gets wacky when you start putting techs in there right away.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, you're going to run into people that are like Peaches, who's probably like, you know, when he was, what was it, 20 years in when you were a staff sergeant, because you joined so far back. And you're going to show up and try to tell him what to do. He's like, I've been dropping bombs since I was 12 years old.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and you know, I was a cross-trainee, and that exact same thing happened to me, right? Like they had to fast track me to get me to be a team leader. And then these guys that had been in the career field. So it was even worse. Like the 2 guys that trained me and certified me as a team leader, they were my shift leaders. They were my like NCOICs on the team. I was their flight chief, you know, as their downrange supervisor. The guys that trained me to be their team leader, I immediately became their supervisor. Like, that's not the best way to do it, right? Like, and you know, there were some other factors that played into that, but you don't want to set yourself up for that. That's not good for the functioning of a team.
Well, I dealt with that whenever I was on my first team. I had a staff sergeant. And so as a senior airman, I had a staff sergeant show up, and now he's my supervisor, and he just went through the team. And I had this air of arrogance on me that I'm like, dude, I've already been deployed twice now, and you're coming here and you're telling me what to do? I was like, so that is very real. Very real. Whether I was wrong or not, I don't know. Maybe I'm right. Maybe screw that dude. You know,
I could tell you as the guy that was that dude that came in and made the mistake, because you would like, I got out of the pipeline and I got in. I was like, okay, well, I've been an NCO for a while. This NCO thing isn't really that new to me. I've been a staff sergeant before I even entered the pipeline. You know, so I'd had some time to have some, at least what the Air Force thought was leadership underneath my belt. And you get in and you want to do good stuff and be a good leader. And then everybody looks at you like, hey, could you do me a favor? Just shut the fuck up. You have no clue what you're talking about or what you're doing. Could you maybe just be quiet and figure stuff out? Like, that's good input. Like, when I first got the input, I was like, well, I could be of value. I could be leading. I have other skills. And then as I grew up, I was like, wow, I wish I would have just shut up. Because I wish everybody would just shut up when they got to the unit and just straight baselined it.
The biggest thing is, like, for those that do, come in as a senior airman or staff, is just be proficient at the job. Be a good dude. Be proficient at the job. Try and learn the job the best you possibly can. Because if you do make tech sergeant, like, I guess hopefully for you, maybe not hopefully for the career field, but hopefully you make tech sergeant, like maybe while you're in the pipeline. And that whole technical sergeant means that everybody's looking to you to be the technical expert. I'll tell you right now, like our master sergeants are extremely proficient. They are the all-knowing kind of folks. Right below them, but probably more proficient than the master sergeants, are the tech sergeants. Like maybe the master sergeants kind of know, like have a background of knowledge that is a little bit higher, but the more proficient ones are the tech sergeants. Right. And man, if you're making tech sergeant in the pipeline, dude, you can make it. Obviously, you can be successful. We have those folks, but dude, you are behind the power curve.
Oh yeah, way behind the power curve.
Yeah, you have to have that mentality that you're catching up, right? Like it was, all these things were easier for me because I didn't join the Air Force till I was like 21 in like basic training or whatever. I felt like I was trying to catch up my entire time to people like Jared that joined when they were 17 years old. I was like, man, I got to catch up in rank. I got to catch up on all these other things. Like I'm behind. I'm 3 years behind where everybody else started from. And so if you jump into the pipeline as a senior airman or a staff sergeant, like you got to catch up. And like you need to be humble about it. Like there are some good things, right? Like we had a guy come through that was a former maintenance NCO. He was a staff sergeant, and his experience leading airmen was way beyond mine. Like he was my student, but they have so many people that he was actually really good at some of those things. Like so, like as far as dealing with his teammates, he was really proficient at that. But he never was like, dude, I'm the same rank as you, and I know about this career field. Like so. Take some of that goodness of leading people, maybe, if you come from one of those career fields where you have tons of airmen that we don't necessarily have. Bring some of that into the career field, some of the goodness, but also approach it with some humility and understand how far behind you are. And some of these guys have been jobbing it for years before you got there. And in this community, rank is not the end-all, be-all.
No, no, definitely not. But I tell you what, the goodness that you can bring as being a cross-trainee is one perspective to the young dudes that are complaining, right? And hey, I want complaints because, if they stop complaining, that means that they're completely gone and they completely don't respect you. So like, there's that. But there's some perspective when, I don't get into this 5-star hotel. You're making me sleep at this Motel 6. You're like, well, honestly, dude, at least you're TDY. Like, and at least we're out here training.
Right.
So, and that's a poor example, but there's perspective. There's also that kind of big Air Force, like, hey, maybe you came from a career field that is a little bit more aware of how the Air Force actually works rather than Air Force Special Warfare, because we have a very skewed idea of the way the Air Force works, which from a senior NCO perspective, boy, you really learn that later on. You're like, yeah, I guess the Air Force doesn't really just kind of work like that. And,
no, when you're an E5 and you've just been living your life in one of the 2 series units, like occasionally, like they don't even let you out, like to talk to Gen Pop, right? Like you don't even like interact with people. They're just like, no, keep these idiots inside the compound. They're allowed to go to the gym. They're allowed to go to the training areas. They're allowed to go TDY, but they're not allowed to talk to anybody. I always love watching. Usually, it would happen like on deployments. Is I love taking dudes on their first deployments and having them interact with just like rank and file people, like watching their face as they come back from like a shopping trip to the BX or something. They're just like, Aaron, guess what I saw, bro? I'm like, what, man? They're like, bro. I'm like, yeah, it's like that everywhere, man. It's like that. They're like, what? It's like that everywhere? I'm like, yeah, bro, it is.
Yeah, I had some chief freaking tell me about wearing my reflective belt, so I told him to fuck off.
So I told him to eat a dick.
Yeah, you're like,
hey, eat a dick.
Who was that?
Right.
Like, all right.
What are some other good things? I figure we should actually give somebody like some beneficial stuff. We do talk about cross-trainees a lot. Trent, what are some other good things that cross-trainees can bring with them to the pipeline experience?
Just some maturity. Really? So if you're coming through as like a senior airman or a staff sergeant, like you're so much closer to being an extension of the cadre. And like Jared said, that perspective, right? Like you've seen the Air Force. Obviously, you left the regular Air Force for a reason, and it always sounds like we're saying something negative about the Air Force, but it's just not where we fit, right? And so, like when these, like you said, when these young kids are complaining about what it is that they're doing, it's like, hey, like, but do you want to be watching the gate? Do you want to be sitting there behind a desk? Do you want to be doing all these other things? Like that's the reality of what's happening. You could be TDY 300 plus days a year with your boys doing this cool stuff, and all I got to do is get through this thing. Or you can go do the job that I did, which is not a bad job. And there's probably like more skill sets that lead to the outside world in that job than our job.
Right.
But you're here for a reason. Like you got the itch to be, to be one of us. So
I have soft skills. I'm a people person.
I'm a people person. What would you say you do here? Right. I provide near and far reconnaissance to Air Force Special Warfare teams in order to support Air Force mission sets. That doesn't mean anything, SR.
Pretty provocative to me.
You didn't. Yeah, it sounds provocative.
Do I need to bring sniper up? Do I need to say that?
Yeah, exactly. I love that. It's like the one shiny, that's your trump card. Like, wow, Uno reverse card. We go to sniper school. Well, actually, from the rumors on the street, you go to a bunch of schools that aren't sniper schools, and people get mad at you. But
well, here we go.
We see the memes, baby. We see the memes. What are some other pieces? If there's another thing that people can bring, like their experiences they come over. So we always tell cross-trainees like what not to do, right? Like, hey, don't come in too heavy. Try to pour, blah 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 blah. But what can those cross-trainees? What can they do to actually get over and provide some value to the team?
Well, so one thing that I can think of, and the only reason, and I'll take the spears or whatever, but as it's EPB season, enlisted performance briefs. So if you're not familiar with it, it's your annual report that shows how you do, and it helps you with promotion, stuff like that. Us knuckle draggers, we are pretty bad writers. We are not great at it. Or the way that we write is, freaking killed 13, enemy killed in action, because you got to spell it out and all that kind of stuff. There's a bunch of that. So we're not very good at it. And so a lot of the awards, a lot of the promotions, like you can tell that one of us wrote it. Whereas that staff sergeant that's coming over, or even that senior airman that's coming over, has got a different style of writing, and perhaps a writing that the Air Force kind of recognizes, embraces a little bit more, and is able to kind of get his people or her people promoted in a better or quicker fashion.
Yeah, bring those EPB writing skills. That was always something that personally, that was something that I actually did bring over. I was an okay writer, especially right off the start. I had 2 master sergeants. I worked for 2 master sergeants that were married, and they were both very, very focused on it at the time I was writing EPRs. But they, the military writing process, they put me through those paces really early, and that actually did pay. It was one of those things that paid dividends off. I literally, in my inbox right now, one of my very good friends that I used to supervise sent me his EPB to be like, hey man, can you look this over for me? Can you help me communicate some of this stuff? And I was like, sure. It's a dorky thing to be good at, but it actually does help. It helps everything else. Like knowing all of these, cross trainees, knowing all of these programs, like you should essentially, if you're a cross trainee, you should kind of like be the first sergeant for your team as well. Yes. You should be able to go, hey, are you having problems with pay? Are you having problems with getting, childcare to stuff? Like you should be able to be that liaison. And Trent did a great job of, you're kind of like that liaison. You're that middle ground between the cadre and the team. And you should really step into that role. The worst cross trainees out there are these people that just like get right into like student mindset. They're like, well, I'm just a student. I'm just here to make it. I got to focus on myself. Well, I guess, yeah, you do. But also you have all these other skills. Like that's not the point, right? Those aren't the attributes. We're not looking for, selfishness. We're not looking for you to like really circle your own wagons because you don't want to fail out of the pipeline. And that way you're not going to give anybody else, like any help. Like that's not what we're looking for, right? So, know those programs, know how to get people help because your airmen are going to need it. Like there's a million problems that you could never even with a gun to your head come up with. Your airmen are going to come to you and they're like, all right, cool. We had a guy on our team, his wife, my ex at the time, my spouse at the time, my ex now, she became kind of like team mom because she was a little bit older. We'd been in the military for a little bit. We had kids, like nobody else on team. Everybody else on team was younger. We had one of the wives come to us and go, hey, so it's really weird, but my husband hasn't gotten me an ID card yet. And I think that don't we get more money for being married? And literally both of us like started raising our eyebrows, and we were like,
oh boy,
yeah. How do you get on and off base? She's like, well, I just like stay on base. Like I don't leave base without him. I don't like him off on the. She wasn't in Deers.
Oh man,
like he hadn't like filed for her to be like, she didn't have access to anything. She did like, they weren't getting marriage, or he was like taking the money and spending it on other stuff. And we were like, okay, so me as a staff sergeant in the pipeline, I'm trying to figure out how to take this guy. And this guy was, man, he didn't make it. I guess I don't feel that bad about saying, but he was, oh man, he was really, he was stupid. No, he was just dumb. I'm trying to think of the right word. Like I'm trying to not get us canceled and use the R word or a G word or a C word or all these other words. But man, this guy was 100%. Like you would like grab him and shake him by the face. It was like the SpongeBob meme where you're like, you have to go get this done. And he'd be like, I have to go get this done. He'd be like, you, me, have to, gotta get it done. Get it done. Say it. I'm not going to do that. Damn it. Like, no, man. Like his name was Dan. Anyway, but you're going to be faced with problems like that you're going to have to be able to work, and you're going to have to be able to fix. And sorry, that's part of your pipeline experience. You can't just turn that off. And I've said pipeline experience twice, like it's a Vegas show. What a terrible Vegas show that would be. Oh, like imagine showing up to Vegas somewhere and just getting the shit smoked out of you at a nice casino.
I'd pay pipeline experience.
Yeah, there are people that would pay for it. We already know that.
Well, yeah, they'd pay $18,000 a weekend for it. I could be the front. I could be the guy at the door. Like as soon as you pay me, I'd be like, "Great, you're a piece of shit. Get in there."
Yeah.
All right. So cross-training. So any save rounds for cross-training stuff, Trent?
No, I mean you're right. I just want to. I'm piggybacking because Jared started chiefing with EPBs, and now I feel like senior NCOing. Yeah,
he did. Yeah.
Yeah, you're the set me up for a certain thing, so I just went with what I know right now.
You stay inside your lane, buddy. Don't you let Trent talk you off target. So Trent, what else you got to close up the cross-training, just quick advice stuff, and why we don't pick up text? That's the reason why we started this talk.
Yeah. So first off, if you're there, you're the Air Force SME, just like they said. Like that's your job. You're still an NCO. You don't not become an NCO just because you're a student. So like take that stuff seriously. And we don't pick up text just because we don't like you. Really, that's what it comes down to.
Wow.
I do want to give my boy Sean a shout out. This is the saddest story of all time. There is a guy that has been trying to get in the pipeline 5 years now. When we were still doing the enlisted assessments, remember when we were doing the separate PJ assessments for cross-trainees? This kid failed by, 5 seconds on a tread, something we don't even evaluate anymore. He's been trying to get into it. He just got turned down for like the 5th time. This guy's resilience and his willingness to continue to train and put himself, like I've maintained contact with him. I'd like to think I'm a mentor, or at least a sounding board for him. He's an awesome guy. I wish that he could get in. I was literally the guy that looked at him and failed him. I was like, sorry, like you had 4 seconds, dude. It was the most heartbreaking thing I've ever seen. Like I say heartbreaking, and I'm not being hyperbolic. I was literally treading next to him in the pool, and I was like, in my head, I'm like count down. I'm like 3, 2, and he puts his hand down and whatever. And I was like, why would you do that? Like it was the first. I was just like, why would you do that, bud? And then that's how he did not make that assessment. And then he didn't get a chance to cross-train A&S. The A&S thing changed. It was midstream, and man, he's looking at other stuff. I do want to give him a shout out, Sean. You're awesome. You're the example for what we want people to do for grit, resilience, and whatever else. But he's hitting that wall. He's hitting that tech sergeant wall, and it's one of those things where you're like, hey, sorry. But that brings us to something that we do want to talk about.
Okay, I did have one. I did have a clarifying question on that, because those cross trainees should have that Excel spreadsheet, and I've got it in front of me right now. So the 5 that's in there, Trent.
Hold on. What are we talking about? What spreadsheet are you talking about?
Why don't I share it?
Oh, there we go.
No.
Why don't I screen share?
Wow, look at us.
The spreadsheet that comes from like Air Force A1.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Well, that's what I was going to tee up. Like that's why we were going to transfer into next. Is they A1, like the Air Force has actually put out the quotas for how many it is that we can take. This hit social media, so all the career fields have this. So as you can look here, you can see Peaches is sharing it. Yep. You can see the spreadsheet. Peaches talking through the spreadsheet they're looking at.
So I've already chopped it down a bit, at least to make it a little easier. So you got your fiscal year 25, you got your AFSC, you got your duty title, or the job title rather. I don't know what that is. I'm assuming that's first term airman.
What, FTA?
FTA?
Yeah.
And then you can see here the allocations. What I'm guessing are the allocations, which are it says 5 zeros for tech sergeants, zeros for masters, and 0 for seniors. But I'm sure it's not 5 get to cross train, right?
No. So There's a lot going on here. First of all, why do med techs need so many tech sergeants? That's crazy.
I have no idea.
Weird. So one of the things to look at here is these are just placeholders, right? And if you don't know how these numbers are generated through the Pentagon A1 process and with the career field managers' inputs, these are basically, look at these as placeholders, right? And you'll notice that all the Air Force, the big four, are 5s across the board, right? For FTA and staff sergeants, right? So that's basically senior airmen and staff sergeants. They're just placeholders. That doesn't mean if 6 people apply to retrain next year that we're not going to find you a slot to retrain. What we don't see on here are your non-prior service, your kids come in straight off the street going through BMT, all of those positions that we're also trying to fill. And so if I'm as the combat control functional or the SR functional or whatever, and I am on my 6th retrainee and I really need this person, and I'm not getting the numbers out of the NPS pipeline, the non-prior service pipeline, all I have to do is make a phone call and I can flip one of those positions. All right. So I know people will look at these numbers and be like, well, I mean, there's only 5. So like, how could I possibly get in there? I know like 6 other people that are trying to do this right now. Settle down, cool your jets. These are just placeholders for folks to get in right now. And the reason that they don't put higher numbers in here is it's difficult for especially our career fields to figure out how many people are actually going to retrain, and B, if they don't hit the numbers or they set the numbers way too high, then like, people and resources and all those things go towards that, and people miss goal and all these other things, that weird things that happen. So they just kind of hit the easy button. It looks like this year, and it's like 5 across the board. If you need more, call us, is basically what it comes down to. Because
nobody really gets, I don't want to say people don't get turned down, but people don't get turned down because of lack of slots. They get turned down because of things within their, their portfolio. Or
it's within their control. It's in the phase 1, phase 2 process, right? Like I can't remember a time where we had, 10 good candidates and only 5 slots, and they're like, sorry, man, wait for next year, you 5. Like that's not the thing. They'll just switch it up.
Yeah.
Perfect. Good. So why do the quotas matter then? If we're just going to fudge the numbers and we're going to tell people all this other stuff, then why have the quotas, Peaches? Like, tell me, if you could just move the goalpost, what's the point of having a goalpost?
It's a great point. If you have to waive, or something, right? Mm-hmm. Then that means it's probably if the going in expectations that you're going to waive or something, like maybe it's just a bad policy or
right.
A bad
maybe
rule.
You should just accelerate, change, or lose, right? Like if it's a bad policy, they're constantly making a waiver to. Well, why don't you just change the policy and go on from there? But
yeah, well, you guys know, like one of the projects that we're working on, kind of behind the scenes with another thing that we're doing, is we're trying to get clean data, right? Here's one of the problems that people don't see is from the tactical level in AETC all the way up to the Pentagon. There's all this data that needs to go up there for them to make these changes. And these changes are done like years in advance. So they're working off 3-year-old data that is tainted because no data is clean data, which is some of the stuff that we're trying to fix hopefully in the future. But like we'll go up there and we'll be, as the functional managers, we'll be like, no, I need this many guys this year because last year, and we're working off like current, numbers in the career fields. And they're like, no, we already set the numbers. And you can adjust them a little bit based on career field input, but like the A1 folks, it's just like this huge, weird algorithm that they're running. And so it's easy to look at that and be like, no one knows what's going on. And it's like, well, we're small and we're flexible. So it's easier just to throw the 5s in there and then we'll just, flex off of that.
Right.
Was that a little too nerdy, I guess? I don't know.
No, it was just nerdy enough. But it speaks to the career fields anyway, too, because we're always in this constant state of flux, right? Like we're always the ones that are, Semper Gumby, just tell us what we want to do, fine. And we just make magic out of lunch meat. So it at least fits in there. Well, that's the cross-training numbers, and that was the big hullabaloo that got put out. We had the, Master Sergeant Romo was on. Old Young Gerald had a great episode. You guys talked about a whole bunch of awesome stuff. It was good. Trent, how'd you feel about that?
I've never met him, but I like him.
He was so, man, that was one of those, and, Peaches, when you were like, oh, dude, I love, editing this episode, as I'm going through the YouTube and doing stuff. Sometimes I'm listening intently. Sometimes I'm just listening for, stuff that's in the background. I'm trying to get stuff done. That was a great episode. Trent, what was your favorite part about talking to Young Gerald Romo?
Just his enthusiasm, I think, for the job, and that guy has to recruit tons of people, not just Air Force Special Warfare people, but he saw this thing and he's like, man, like for me it was kind of sad because he was like, well, I wish I would have had this opportunity coming out of, high school or college. That he wishes he would have known about it. And I know it's hard for people to understand, especially these days, because we have, the podcast and a few other resources out there. Like no one, like you had tech sergeants, master sergeants, chiefs in the Air Force that had no idea that we existed for a long time. And I think it's getting a little bit better now, but like this dude joined the Air Force, he did his job, and he probably didn't find out about us for real until he became a recruiter. And he was like, oh, like, you know, and anything he did get, on the end of the data he did get was probably like those, you know, those stupid SEER things where it's like, oh, they have to break your bones at SEER school to see if
they're going to drown you. Yeah, the only thing you have to do to be at a PJ is they're going to drown you with selection.
No less than 3 times just to prove it.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, to prove you're there for it.
Yeah, exactly.
On the third time, they'll be like, this time you could die. See your death.
Yeah.
Your heart actually has to stop. And they bring you back.
His heart was still going over here. I don't know if he's the guy.
Dude,
you know?
We're joking, but those are things that people would say in basic. I heard this. You know, you're like, right.
That doesn't make any sense at all.
They makes kill you and then bring you back.
Well, yeah, it's easy. They're pararescuemen. They can revive you on the deck. That's no problem. That's no problem at all. I love those little like the jokes about SEER. Like, oh yeah, SEER. We can't talk about it, but what we can say is they're authorized to break small bones.
Yeah.
No, they are
really?
not. No,
are they though?
Not.
No. Does that make any sense at all? That they would be able to break your bones? No, it doesn't. Maybe you don't talk about. I always love the rumor mill too. So I did here's an interesting rumor that I got from the DMs. And this is as always, there's a little bit of truth in these rumors, right? So there have been people that they were allowed to go from STTS, and Trey Free talked about this on Insight Through Experience. They pulled people directly from STTS up to the Tier 1 assessment selection. They let them go up and try the assessment selection. In that same vein of students being allowed to do stuff, there's a rumor on the street, and I've been trying to verify this, but we don't know any like super duper EOD boys. I got one EOD contact that I've been reaching out to try to get him to verify. However, they are saying that there is a program inside of EOD that you may be able to assess and then get your name essentially put on a list to go work in an ST unit. And I was like, okay, so for EOD, that doesn't make any sense. EOD isn't at any of the 2 series unit. Are you aware of any EOD techs working at any 2 series?
Nope.
There are like 1 or 2 spots for EOD at the Tier 1 unit, but usually those are shared. Usually it's like, it's not necessarily
actually
Air
usually
Force.
not Air Force. It's
right,
it's
exactly.
Service. Well, we won't say who it is, but yeah.
Right, but it's not usually us, which is the thing where I was like, okay, well, that might be a brand new program. The problems I see with this, why in the world does it make any sense to let a student assess for a different thing that doesn't actually help your career field? What is that student going to do when he graduates his little 3-level course and then goes to whatever the thing that he made it? Like, that doesn't seem to make any sense. And if you don't have anybody working at those units, like let's say that you're at an EOD schoolhouse and you're an EOD master sergeant and you're running this assessment and selection for students, but you don't work for a 2 series unit, you've never worked for a Tier 1 unit, how are you assessing and selecting them? How are you running them through an extra PT test and being like, oh, you're in shape, you should be able to go to an STS? When I get questions like that in the DMs, it's so hard for me to put on like a face of like, I want to help and get you to answer the question. But I just started asking questions. I'm like, does that make any sense? They were like, yeah, I heard they're doing the same thing for TAC P. And I'm like, okay, hold on. So what you're telling me is you're going to have somebody go through the entire SWO-V process all the way through. They're going to get down to the TAC P schoolhouse. And then the TAC P schoolhouse instructors are going to run like a separate little selection. And if you make it through that selection, then you're going to be like vectored into the soft TAC P pipeline. Why would the career field ever let that happen? Why would rank and file TAC P? Imagine how mad you'd be as a staff sergeant TAC P that just served your time at the ASOS, got a couple deployments, and you're getting ready to assess, and they're like, oh, sorry, no room. We had 10 students that we selected out of the TAC P schoolhouse that are going to go soft TAC P, right? When we hear these, like, I'm happy to address rumors, and I'm happy to be like, oh, I heard this was a thing, or I heard this was a thing. Okay, tight. Does that make any sense? Does that make any sense at all? Have you guys heard any of these rumors? Does that make sense to you guys?
No, it doesn't. And
for a million different
continue on
reasons.
this, but don't let me forget. There's a rumor that I've got to address as well.
Send it. I'm just bullshitting.
So there's still a rumor, and I got hit up by the uncle who is a retired son of a controller. His nephew or something like that. He's in the pipeline, and he said that his CCT cadre are telling him that JTAC is no longer going to be a thing for CCT. So I'm not going to
Why would that be a thing, Peaches?
I don't know.
As the number 1 JTAC in the Air Force, JTAC 01, the pack, the man, the myth, the legend. You do everything. You're here at the home of the fighter pilot. You do everything with JTAC. No, everybody knows If they call on a SAT channel, they're like, I need a JTAC. That rings directly to your phone.
Oh, it goes straight to my office? Oh, okay.
It goes straight
Jared
to your
actually
cell
has
phone,
an
your
HLZ
personal.
in his backyard strictly for these situations, especially after he retires. Like he's got his wood cutting area, and then he's got his HLZ.
Are we going back to Stallone days with a little Rambo? Is that what
I hope so?
Or
You
is that
drew
Commando?
first blood.
That's Commando.
It was Commando.
Yeah.
You drew first blood.
Yeah.
Okay, so Jared, let's talk about JTAC, the qualification for CCT.
The JTAC qualification, the Joint Terminal Attack Controller mission set for combat control, is not going away. So I don't know if there's a misunderstanding or there's just bad rumment or whatever it is, but the JTAC mission and JTAC qualification and capability is not going away for combat control. That doesn't matter whether it's at a tier 1 unit or a 2 series. It doesn't matter. It is remaining. That is our bread and butter in terms of JTAC and assault zones, force projection. Like that's what we do.
So you know where it came from. Like in the height of GWAT, how many folks at the 2 series units, like percentage wise, were JTACs?
Every
on the combat
control, all of them, except for the brand new guys that showed up.
And if you weren't, you were shamed. Like if you were a pariah at the unit, if they hated you and you didn't want to do JTAC, I mean, you were just shoved aside. Like during those times, you were either a JTAC or you worked in ops, and that was it. Like there was no in between. Like everybody was a JTAC all the time.
Yeah, because the combatant commanders were asking for more and more and more and more, right? Like the taskings coming down were insane. So just because you could show up to a 2 series unit now and JTAC is not the only thing, right? Doesn't mean that it is not a thing.
Right, but we're not in Afghanistan, everybody. We're not in Iraq. We're not running 3 theater operations where we're dropping bombs everywhere at all times. So if there's not that many requests for JTACs, then why would you make everybody a JTAC? Like that doesn't logically follow. That doesn't mean the skill set's going away. It doesn't mean we're throwing away the capability. It means the need isn't there. So we're not going to produce that many people. And there's a little bit of like, it's kind of like telephone game. I always try to caution instructors or operators when they're talking when you're telling stuff to people that don't have the full picture like you do. Like with the instructors, when they sit there like, oh, congratulations guys, fucking JTAC's going away. Really what they mean is, hey guys, combat operations have slowed down. There's not nearly as many requests for JTAC slots. So the unit's been prioritizing different mission sets. So there is a line essentially now. There's like a waiting to get into SOTAC. Like now we have to rack and stack, and we have to put the strike troops first. And we have to make sure that their program is good. And then we have to make sure the programmatics are good. And those are 2 different things. And then we have to make sure that we're maintaining currencies for the appropriate combatant commander. And we have to go on, right? That's what he means in his head when that instructor is bitching like, congratulations guys, JTAC's going away. No, it just means that it's changing a little bit. But the students that are hearing this, they don't have the wherewithal or the nuance to understand what that really means. And what that gets translated into is like, oh, they're just going to delete it. Now, granted, we don't do ourselves many favors when we fucking just delete dive school. And then we're the guys that are like, we're the guys that are going like, what do you mean delete? What do you mean delete dive school? They're not going to delete dive school. And then they just fucking do. Thanks, Fat Tony. Anyway, have fun at the academy, you fucking dork.
You said that.
I said that. No, I speak for my own. And by the way, I'm retired. I got my DD214 blanket. Tony Bauerfein, you're fat. I don't give a fuck. Your nickname is Fat Tony. Have fun at the academy. And I said that on my own name. Text me if you got a problem with me. You don't have my number? Guess what? You don't know me well enough to have a fucking problem with me. Go on with your life. Yeah. Delete a dive school, you piece of shit.
By all accounts, the cadets are super happy that you're there.
Yep. Nope, that's a lie. He was being sarcastic. I've seen the text messages in the behind the scenes chat. You're doing a really bad job. You're doing a really bad job. Day 1 of being a commander, you go in and you don't change everything right away. You don't burn everything to the ground. You take 6 months to hide and wait. That's just advice from a senior NCO. Take it or leave it. Retired senior NCO. But when we do stuff like that, and we shoot ourselves in the foot, and we have these like snap decisions or knee-jerk reactions. That actually gives like some of these other rumors. That makes every rumor like, okay, well then this is a thing, right? So now every rumor that's coming out of, the Cone News Network and One's Not Ready and all the SOT Team 6 down at San Antonio. Now every rumor has some credence because you're like, well, I don't know. I didn't think they were going to delete dive school either. So maybe we are getting rid of the JTAC qual. Yeah. So that's how these things take life and get legs. Which we do ourselves a disservice here.
Yeah, which is why I just wanted to put it out, like because it's and dude, you crushed the articulating the nuance part of it, because you do hear things. I mean, that's where those things like seer's allowed to break bones, or that's how that stuff kind of percolates throughout the system, and it's just, so I'm not mad about it, but it's just it's like, hey, don't sweat it. Things are going to be just fine. Things are going to be okay.
Yeah. I've said it in front of students. I've made the mistake of, I've said off the cuff things that are like funny in the team room, like, oh, whatever, you're going to the 48th. Okay. Well, they haven't deployed in like 2 years. They took a 2-year break and everybody's just getting their critical care paramedic. So have fun being a flight nurse at the 48th. That was like, exactly. And then like people that hear that, like, if you don't get it, that's a joke between the units. Like if for whatever reason, like Vegas took like a 1.5 or 3 years worth of deployment, because our commander, shout out TX, our commander just decided that he wanted to take the deployment schedule. So we deployed like our 2 or 3 troops. Like we had 3 to start and then 2 troops after that, and then went to flight. We deployed every single year, right? We took everybody's deployments. We're like, F it, we'll do it. So of course, like there was a little joke. We're like, oh, well, that's cool. The 58s will just handle the entire deployment cycle for these 4 years that we're here.
We got it.
Yeah, we got it.
On your shoulders.
but if you're on the outside looking in and you hear that kind of funny back and forth, and again, it was just meant to be funny back and forth. But if you don't have the nuance to understand, you could be like, oh, wow, I heard the 48th doesn't do shit. Like, that's not what I said. That's not what I meant. That's not the nuance. That's not the truth. But that's what gets propagated. And then that goes at the speed of rumor, right? And now that we have social media, it goes even faster. So students, I'll just say, hey, if you're in the pipeline and you hear these instructors, like, listen, they're just imagine for a minute that they're exactly like you. You're in the pipeline because you want to get qualified, go down range, deploy, and do the job. Your instructors are the same people. You are the same. They want to deploy and go do the job too. So sometimes when they feel comfortable enough with you, where they'll share stuff and they'll go, well, this fucking stupid JTAC school in the way. I don't even get to go to JTAC school now. It doesn't mean that it's going away for the entire, they're not speaking for their career field. They're looking at you as a dude, as a bro, and they're going, yeah, man, get ready for it, young guy, because like it might be different when you get there. They just you don't understand the nuance enough to understand what they're saying, and they don't understand your nuance of complete and total no clue what's going on. They're just like trying to.
They're saying it out of frustration,
right? For sure.
Because I tell you what, they drop your ass in a heartbeat if it meant they could go back and become a J call sign and freaking go drop bombs. Drop you in a heartbeat.
They'd be like, yeah, I'm
out and go half into an offset and freaking walk in and smack a target.
Man, all I want to hear is some Suicide Boys just blasting on my little iPod. 3K walk in. It's dark. It's your boys. It's fun. You might shoot someone. It's great. That's really why you get in, right? That's the reason why you're there.
And a lot of quitters push these things too, because you'll get the whole pile of quitters from that class that were like, well, I quit because I heard JTAC isn't even a thing anymore. So I tried to go TAC P. They didn't let me in, so I tried to go SEER, but now here I am working in a hospital somewhere. And it's just like, it's not real.
Is that really what happened? Or did you quit day 2 because you didn't want to do it? Like, you have no idea. But I mean, we did the same thing, back in the day when PJs took on the Kazovac mission, and we were in, southern Afghanistan. So 2000, I think we had to pick that up, 2006, 2007.
It was early.
When we hopped into the Kazovac game, pretty early there. Iraq, when we first started going to Iraq, we didn't do a shit ton of it right away. And then we got into it in Iraq and took on that Kazovac mission. But there was so much bad blood in the career field over that Kazovac mission. Some dudes loved it because they were getting, for guys that just want to go get into a fight, for guys that just want to go and do stuff, watching dust off, take off, and then watching them getting shot off HLZs and, having the frustration and being like, dude, we could have fixed that problem. Like, that problem is fixed by an Air Force ground maneuver team. You should have sent us in with our 50 cals and our team of actual shooters, and we could have fixed that problem. I get it. It's tough. But then the other half of it was like, how many PJs did we lose to Kazovac?
Yep.
I mean, we lost, a considerable amount of dudes to reactive CSAR, Kazovac, medevac that we were doing in those countries. I lost friends doing it. I'm saying this as a guy that has lost close friends on those helicopter crashes, performing that Kazovac mission. When it got turned off, I mean, I remember the deployment where they were like, yeah, you're never going to be on Kazovac again. There was a collective sigh of relief. It was just like, okay, good. Because at that point, 2000, fast forward 2011, 12, kind of like into 15, it wasn't point of injury every time. It wasn't a firefight every time. There was a rotation. It was the Brits, it was the Kazovac, and it was Pedro. So it was those three. And it was like, whose turn is it now? And there were very few tactical decisions that went into like, who are we going to send? Like, there were times where I would be in an attack And I'd be like, why are you sending a CH-47 with a British medical team on it into a hot HLZ? What are you going to do? They don't even have any security with them. You should send us. And they're like, well, you went on the last one. I'm like, this doesn't make any fucking, this is war, dude. This is not spreading around.
Yeah, they're not bringing violence of action. They're good, good folks, but they're not equipped and armed.
I love the Merc. They were awesome. They saved a ton of lives. They're not fucking shooters. They're medical people that fly on the back of a CH-46 or 47. That's what they do. Like, it's okay to say that about them.
Yeah.
And we did it to ourselves too. I don't know how many deployments I've been on where we were leaving and really the tactical decision about who was going to go into the zone wasn't driven off of tactics. It wasn't driven off your -1 or your -3. It was, hey, you went in the zone last time, so we're going to go in this time because my pilot wants to land. My pilot wants to keep his hands warm. That always gave me the heebie-jeebies. And stuff like that happens. Because when you're working, dudes that are in, Helmand, I had friends that would go and they drop 240 missions in a deployment. That's fucking ridiculous. Like it's 8 hours a day of you just getting re-rolled to mission after mission after mission. And those like if the tactical presentation is like one of these aircraft is supposed to go in before the other one, and then this is what the other aircraft does. If that's supposed to happen all the time, I get it. You'd want to switch it up. But that's not tactics. That's us doing things that we're just like, whatever. The Kazvac mission was like that for us. I'm not saying we didn't do good work. There are people out there that are alive because PJs went into a firefight and saved them. But what I will say is, just like everybody focuses on the JTAC thing with combat control and they think it's the end all be all and that's the only thing that you do. No, it's a great part of the skill set. It's something that you bring to the fight. It's a capability that you have, and that's not going away. PJs know how to work on helicopters and go save people. Like, we're always going to be able to pull that out of our back pocket, but it's not all inside combat rescue. Being a JTAC or being a combat controller is not all JTAC. Yes, it is.
You are such a liar. Is that?
I love that those dudes are all like heading the career field now. Those young officers, those young lieutenants that you see there, those are all colonels now. Those are all commanders.
Wild, right?
Yeah, and everybody else is retired. Everybody else in that show that was an enlisted guy is now gone.
I remember taking leave one day, or not one day, but leave for like a week, and I went and did some contracting work for Tier 1 group, and those guys, before they had started filming it, were running around. That was their first kind of training trip to get used to the cameras and stuff like that. And they were telling me about like this inside combat rescue thing that they were going to be filming for Discovery or something like that, or Nat Geo.
Or Nat Geo. Yeah.
And I was like, oh, okay, that's cool, man. Whatever. That sounds fun. But yeah, you're right. They're all leading the career field now. It's pretty wild.
They are. Yeah. No, it's hilarious. It's good to see them. Trent, if there was a movie that they were going to make about special reconnaissance, who would be the star of that movie?
Like the actor or the person?
Yeah, who would you want to represent from an actor standpoint to be like? So Jake Gyllenhaal is already every JTAC, right? So that's already done.
Or not the guy from Badlands or whatever.
Land of Bad or whatever.
Yeah, that's another other thing. Hemsworth. Yeah.
Is that a Hemsworth?
A Liam or
Liam? Yeah, the younger brother.
Right? Okay.
Yeah, I didn't even know. Have you seen Land of Bad, Trent? I haven't seen it.
Yeah. It was. I mean, my expectations coming into it were so low because I'd seen all the memes already and everything. And so like one night we turned it on and I was like, well, this is hilarious. But if you just approach it like it's an 80s action movie, it's like, okay, that's not bad.
Yeah. I always like watching movies with people that just can't, like, yeah, it's terrible. Just lean into it being terrible. Like, it's one guy, like the Hurt Locker. Everybody was like, oh, the Hurt Locker is so bad because it's so unrealistic. That's exactly why I watched it. That's exactly why I liked it. Like, you're watching a movie for suspension of disbelief. Like, you're telling me you only watch documentaries? What are you talking about?
Yeah.
Weirdos.
But it'd be David Duchovny.
David Duchovny.
Yeah.
A younger one, or like
he'd be like the lead guy, like if I was gonna like pick someone to be like, here's the leader of special reconnaissance to tell the young guys what to do.
David Duchovny.
Yeah, he'd be the guy.
I have not thought about it. Did you ever see the series he was in, Californication?
Yeah.
Not really.
Oh, dude, that is a crazy one. The only reason I even bring that up is because that was the only thing that I've seen him in other than the X-Files, and that was a show that it was on one of the drives when we deployed. So we ran through a show, and we're like, hey, we're in a show hole. We got to pick a family time show because we worked at night, and then in the morning you would go typically work out. We'd have a competition, then you'd work out hard, then you get breakfast, and then we would all shower and we have a family time show. So everybody would be just house and breakfast food before you go to sleep for the day. And we watched Californication. Great show. Here's the reason why. From a review standpoint, tons of sex, hilarious writing, crazy scenarios, and it's set in California, and David Duchovny goes off. Like, there's just crazy things that happen all the time. There's enough boobs to keep everybody interested. It was great. 8 out of 10, Californication, great show.
Yeah, he's kind of weird, but he seems like a smart guy too, but he thinks about things, and he's going to have some weird takes on a lot of things. And I'm like, there's an SR guy that's like leading, like the older guy that's like telling everybody what to do. Like, that's him.
Is that
he
the
looks
archetype
fit, but he's not like super fit,
right,
like he's not.
Yeah.
It's like, maybe he did something at some point.
Well, it's like the tactical dad bod. It's like the class, it's the guy from Sicario, right? With the big BCG glasses, and he doesn't look like he's in shape, but that guy's a fucking murderer.
It's
like
every merc.
Yeah, if those glasses ever show up, it's like the old Delta dude. Like, he still has that stock on the M16, and he's walking, but he's got like the fisherman's vest, and you're like, that guy is a fucking murderer. That guy is going to kill you. If there was an archetype, if you had, we joked about it. That's a pretty funny thing. So Trent, if you had to describe the SR archetype, right? Who is that guy? So you already started off with David Duchovny, like, kind of like dad bod, looks like he knows some stuff, intelligent. What is the archetype? If people are like, what type of person is an SR guy? What was that person look like? And then Peach, get ready, because I want to hear about it for controllers too. So you guys,
I already got it.
Well, we know controllers. I don't know. SR guys are just like your classic. If you don't, your classic like weird underdogs, right? Like a soccer player that grew up in the 90s, that grew his hair out, was kind of like a free spirit, but like also read a lot. And this is probably a lot about me and not about
I was going to say,
else.
You're projecting a lot right now. You think you're Sunshine from Remember the Titans? Is that what an SR guy is? The reason
that I felt that I fit in this career field was I kind of like, I was a small kid growing up, played soccer in the 90s, which it was even less cool back then, right? Like,
it totally was.
And you had to learn how to talk smack with the football players that could rip your arms off and beat you with them.
Right.
And like all these different things, because this isn't a career field where like people care about anything you have to say necessarily, ever.
Right.
And people aren't just going to hand you mission sets. And so you have to like find a way to like kind of weasel yourself in there from a position of not power to do things. And that sounds negative. That's a negative take on it, but you know what I mean?
I knew when I was teeing you up, it was not going to be the most positive take. I know you well enough. I can't wait, and just mere hours to give you a big fat hug.
But like
to get your negative Nancy self.
Our friend Spencer is like kind of like the archetype, right? Like Spencer's like a super awesome dude. But if you look at Spencer, if Spencer passed you in the street, no one would be like, this dude can take your head off from 1,000 meters away and like not feel anything about it. But then he can also have some weird conversations about probably some of the stuff that he's interested in. He's also a nice guy. He's kind of like a little bit of everything. Like
he's a super nice guy.
Yeah.
The only thing Spencer feels from 1,000 yards is recoil.
He would murk you and not care. He's not losing sleep.
He'd sleep like a baby. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was one of my favorite, Nate Cox. I mentioned him a couple times. I don't know why he's on top of mine. What's up, Cheap Cox? How are you doing? I know you listen to the podcast. You don't. One of the funny things is he tells so he was he worked at the tier 1 unit for quite a long time. And he talked about mental armor and preparing himself. And he tells a very intense story about how he has prepared himself. And he's like, listen, I'm just one of those people, he's very bland, very even keel sort of dude. And he's like, listen, we were walking on target one night, and, I walked, and there was just this arm in this tree, and it was just this weird thing. And I looked up at my nods, and I was like, oh, weird, that's an arm. And it's because we had to drop bombs on the compound before we went in. And I don't know, that was weird. So I thought about that before I went to sleep, but it didn't keep me up. I'm just like, what the fuck's wrong with you?
He's just doing math, like, where did the bomb have to hit to like project the arm?
He literally was like, he was like, just for a second, I started to reach up to grab it, and then I was like, wait a second, I don't have a glove on. No, I got it. Okay, never mind. And he just like went on with his life.
I can't save that guy.
Yeah. Wait a second. I don't think this is gonna work out. I don't think I have a bag big enough for this one. Peaches, what are the combat control archetype?
Okay, I've got two. Nice. For the two different types. So the first one, and I think the obvious one, is Expendables Mickey Rourke's character. The tattoo, pipe, freaking old grizzled dog like that.
Of course.
You're like, okay, well that kind of checks. Harley riding, stripper, like.
You're describing the block party. That's everyone that was there.
I bet I am.
There had to be how many, like the amount of tattoo ink, and like I imagine like the bracelets, like the spiky bracelets, like multiple of them, like leather and stuff. I imagine that had to be given at the door, right? Like,
flannel,
did you get your
flannel was just handed out?
A lot of flannel. You can always tell, like the 2 Series dudes. You can tell everybody at the Pacific Northwest, they got skinny jeans, flannel, and a big watch. It's like going out in Tacoma. You look around, you're like, oh wow, flannel, big watch, big watch. What's up, Ranger Bat? How you guys doing? Money Bat 2. What up? 2-2. I guess. What's up? Okay, so what's the other one?
The other one is a little bit more obscure. So it takes me back to a 2002 movie, Narc is what it's called. It's got Ray Liotta and Jason Patric. Ooh. So Jason Patric, they're both undercover. Anyway, if you haven't seen the movie Narc, it's fantastic. But Jason Patric did some shit and saw some shit and things went bad, but he's very analytical, very kind of caring about his family, but he's torn, like that kind of guy. But he's rough around the edges, that kind of person. So nice. I don't know. Like I said, it's really obscure, but good movie. Check it out.
Yeah. Shout out Narc. So we got some really old recommendations. Go check out Californication with David Duchovny. I think it was on HBO, and then go check on Narc. PJs is really simple. I don't know what it is. Every single PJ is there to help, right? So like the medicine thing underpins everything that we do. So like the jokes about PJ, that's how you figure out what the PJ archetype is, right? Like these crunchy, hacky sack playing, tree hugging, climbing, sky nurse, whatever. It's because everywhere deep in your heart, whether or not you know it as a PJ, you want to treat a human and save them. Like that is where we come from. So no, you can't ever get away from it. It doesn't matter if you're a dyed in the wool killer, you don't do a single piece of medicine, you work at the tier 1 unit, the only thing you do is deploy with the army and shoot people in the face for your entire career. The second somebody has a boo-boo, that PJ is going to be like, I got it.
What do you need?
What do you need? I got you, buddy. Come here, I got this hug for you. But it's always it's that analytical mindset. It's the having a broad skill set. They don't want to be great at one thing. Jack of all trades, master of none, but is better than a master of one. We like being there, a little bit egotistical. We want to be involved in a whole lot of conversations, right? I had a CAG commander one time, a Bravo squadron dude, look at me and go, you know what? I love PJs because you guys can weigh in on about 90% of topics. He's like, you're not the 100% subject matter expert on this one specific thing, but you're like 90% there on everybody's thing. He was like, you guys are awesome to have around, and I love it. And I think PJs and PJ, candidates, they want to be that person. They want to be the person that wants to affect. And I think SR and CCT are the same. Like nowhere else can a single E4 affect the battle space like a pararescueman, combat controller, TAC-P, or a special reconnaissance man in the Air Force. I'm sorry, it's just the truth. A JTAC, an E4 JTAC can turn the tide of a battle with a radio. A E4 pararescueman can respond to a mass casualty event and save the lives of more than 10 people and make it, turn what would be a tragedy, an American tragedy, a national level tragedy, into a bad night, but nobody died. That's what pararescue and combat control can do. TAC-P, same thing. Special reconnaissance, the things that they can do can affect the battle space from a singular person like nobody else. You need a team of people to do that everywhere else. And I think that's what attracts people. It's like the archetypes of, of course, controllers are going to be, they're sky trash, they're dumb jocks, they ride Harleys, they have pistols. PJs are hippies, sit down to PJs is a funny thing that, controllers will be like, oh, these Skyners sit down to PJs. You guys are so nice. And we're here to kill people, blah, 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 blah. Well, you're really here to run a DCP on a runway because you're not going to be a JTAG.
That would be a dynamic cone penetrometer.
That dynamic cone penetrometer. I'll be over here the CCP if you need me, buddy.
So I can get a CBR, a California bearing ratio.
So if you don't know, I'm an AFCEC certified concrete specialist, and I don't think this is going to be able to hold a C-130.
I am one of those guys.
But
that course, by the way, was not easy. That was not fun at all.
Easy course.
And I swear it's like the nerdiest thing. Like this is really inside baseball. But Taylor, you remember Taylor Peach that was on 5 Troop with me. That dude was an absolute genius. That guy explained. He sat down one time and he was like, "Let me tell you what we did in this course." And I was like, "Are you freaking serious?" Yeah. Like I would not be able to make that course.
This airfield can take 10,000 passes, and those dudes are hard to come by now. But I tell you what, they are sought after.
Well, I'll tell you what. If it wasn't for him, I am not exaggerating this at all. The Horn of Africa would have shut down for almost 6 months, to include a place that was south that was very important, if it wasn't for Taylor and that course. He single-handedly kept operations going during a deployment and for the Horn of Africa. I will tell you 100% because of that course and because he was so good at it.
He's
But
out there tasting soil.
just
Freaking-
absolutely, he's just
That's one of those things though, where people don't want to go to that course, or they didn't. And if you go to that course, it's not cool. Nobody is like, you don't get a patch, you don't get anything for it. But to actually
imagine wearing an AFCAC patch.
Oh my gosh.
Imagine walking around telling people that you know how to read soil density better than they do.
Yeah, but that was the reason when I ripped out on my last deployment, that's what Bubby looked at me and goes, because I was the only guy, and he goes, dude, you really saved our butts by having that course and being the guy for this half of this rotation. And it's just like, oh, okay, well, like that's good, but no one cares. But it was super nerdy, and like my brain cells, I left some of my brain cells over in Panama City because that course was stupid. The hardest part is like the person next to you can come up with the like, hey, we're good for 10,000 passes, and I'm next to him. I'm like, I say we're good for 30,000 passes, and they look at how you got there. They're like, oh, you're both right, and people would just like lose their minds.
Right. But having those skills, and I'll tell you what, like having some of those, those other skill sets, I've had PJs that go to wacky courses before, and you're like, why would I possibly need that? And then it always happens like that. It just so happens that you need the one specialty, and you look over and that guy's just got a shit-eating grin. He's like, I got it. It's cool. I don't know, but I think that's, the reason why we talk about it all the time. Why is AFSpec war different? Why are combat controllers different? Why are PJs different? Man, because as an E4, you can change the course of a battle by yourself. You can't do that anywhere else. That's why we love it. That's why it's awesome. It's why we'll make fun of each other here, and I'll call Peaches a silly little JTAC that doesn't get to do anything. Sky trash when he jumps.
I was going to say, we didn't call PJs insufferable Captain America wannabes, but
oh yeah, dude,
I thought we were going to get there.
Nobody hates PJs worse than, and that's the thing too, is the self-righteousness. That's the other archetype of PJs is we're better than you, and we know we're better than you.
Well, the one thing that you didn't say is what actor you would be, who would star as a PJ.
Oh, that's a really good question. I mean, I think it's got to be like Henry Cavill. I mean, just that square jaw. Like he's so good looking. He's so buff. He's just huge. I think that's pretty much.
It's probably. I don't know when we'll drop this, but spoiler alert: if you haven't seen Deadpool.
I have not.
He makes a cameo in that.
Who does? Henry Cavill does? As Superman?
And nope. Somebody else. And he's dreamy.
Is he dreamy? He guy's dreamy. Square jawed.
And I think good looking. He may have a future in whatever role that he plays in there. I'll tell you afterwards if you want to hear it. But, yeah.
Why wouldn't you just spoil it right here? I don't care. But you said spoil it. 3, 2, 1.
Plays a different version of Wolverine.
Oh, no way. Really?
And it's good.
Ooh,
okay. Like the multiverse Wolverine. Yeah, he plays a version of it, and it's like, I mean, it's all of 15 seconds maybe, but it's really good.
Okay, good. Hollywood, you should hire Peaches for Wolverine because Wolverine was called Wolverine because he's not tall.
Because he's not tall, right? He's very small.
I don't want to be too big of a nerd, but Wolverines are not big animals. That's why they called him Wolverine, and he had the claws. Not Henry Cavill's like 6'6" in my mind.
Yeah, he's not massive to me,
but he's a big
right?
Yeah.
So
I don't know how big he actually is, but he's jacked anyway.
Yeah. I would have said Joseph really Gordon. Oh, sorry. I would have said Joseph Gordon-Levitt. Yeah, except he was on that White Dudes for Kamala call, which means he definitely knows what that chair is for in the hotel room. You know what I mean? Like that one chair that's always in the hotel room. Gordon-Levitt, he knows what it's for. That guy knows what's up.
Did he go full anti-democracy?
He went full whatever. I don't want to get too political on the podcast, but that guy showed up in a freaking Zoom call that he didn't need to be in to virtue signal to the world. So I'm pretty much done with that dude. Loved him in Inception though. Great. Fantastic. Looper was a great movie. He was okay in Batman. Love it. He just makes bad political decisions and forces me to be part of that going around.
A lot of that going around. It's election season. A lot of bad decisions going around.
A lot of bad decisions. I
think that's a good that'll get you killed.
Yeah. Do we have anything else?
No, I don't think so. I do want to say, if you're not tracking, we are on X or Twitter. We are trying to not branch out, but more of a concern about, when it is election season, there's a lot of shadow banning that goes on, and a lot of people find ways to get canceled and that kind of stuff. So as a way to kind of make sure that we are still able to get out there, we're on YouTube. We're intermittently, but getting better on Rumble, and we're getting really good on Twitter. So go over there and follow us on everything. That way, if YouTube does decide to take down an episode or shut our channel or suspend our channel for a little bit, at least you can find us over there.
Yep.
Yeah.
Follow us everywhere. One's ready on everything. Check us out. Trent, what you got?
Jared's apology to all the fatties is going to be over there on Twitter, so check it out.
I'd like to take this opportunity to apologize to absolutely no one.
Yeah, I just wanted to put this out there. Like, hey, everybody, since this is it's the official podcast, the United States Air Force. Every one of the hosts, they speak for themselves, okay, and everybody else doesn't agree with them. That's how the world works. So if you're gonna get super butthurt about it, just do me a favor. Take your issue and just write it down on a piece of paper and then read it and then eat that piece of paper, because I don't care about your opinion. It does not matter to me. Have a great day, everybody. That's the One's Ready podcast. Go over to onesready.com, check us out, like, subscribe, turn on the notification bell. We'd really like it. Share the show, get us out there. And if anybody had any problem with what happened here in the podcast today, go ahead and give me a call. I'd be happy to talk to you about it. Still had this many calls in the entire time. So anyway, have fun. Okay, bye.